Hello, this is a tutorial I'm making how to use Twixtor and Resolve in order to, particularly for AMVs. So, without further ado, first off, what is Twixtor? Twixtor is a plugin, and what it does is it looks at Eclipse existing frames, and it creates new in-between frames based on the already existing frames. This effect has two main uses. The first use is if you have a clip that's, let's say, 1 second long, and you want to give it a slow motion effect that lasts for 2 seconds instead. However, simply stretching the clip to 2 seconds is going to make it look choppy and all that, so we don't want that. So you can use Twixtor in that case, and it'll allow you to elongate the clip while still making it look smooth. Or use case 2 is if you have a clip that's 1 second long, and you want to keep it 1 second, but you just want the animation to look more fluid within that 1 second. These are both two of the main reasons why you would want to use Twixtor, especially in an AMV. Twixtor does not come with Resolve. Twixtor is an OFX plugin by Revision Effects. The OFX part is important because what it means is that the plugin was made using a standard that will work in most video editors, including Resolve. So these effects, unfortunately, cost many thousands of dollars, so there are alternate ways to get it. Though, however, I can't help you there. Just remember, Google's your friend, and you want the OFX version. Anyways, without further ado, let's begin the tutorial. So, first off, what you want to do is you're going to want to find a good source clip. A good source clip is going to have lots of frames with not a bunch of drastic movement. If you have choppy frames and large movements happening in a short amount of time, Twixtor has trouble with those. So your first step is to find a clip that will actually work well with Twixtor and has lots of nice frames to work with. For this example, I'm going to use this clip right here of Mob being kicked. So there we go. So that's what I'm going to end up trying to animate. And you can see there are lots of frames in this animation, so it should be fairly good. There is also lots of screen shake if you look here at the beginning. And so that's going to be a problem. And then also there is smoke that comes up, and that smoke is going to be a problem. So I'll try to walk you through how to get that to work. So the first step that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open a new timeline. So I have these timelines up here. If you don't see this, you're going to want to go here, and you're going to want to click this right here, stacked timelines. So I'll click it off. This is what it normally is. You just want to go over here and click it on. And there you go. You have different timelines. I'm going to hit this plus to add a new timeline. And then I'm just going to take that clip over here. This is the source clip. I'm going to hit Control C, come over here, and Control V. That'll paste that clip over here. Now, what we want to do is we want to cut this into a bunch of individual frames, and then we want to remove all the duplicate frames. So let me just do that real quick. Alright, there we go. So we've cut this into a bunch of individual frames. And so now what you want to do is, ideally you want every single frame that Twixtor works with to be its own unique frame. So you don't want any duplicates. So this is the first frame here. I'm going to hit over, and now we can see that the next frame, it looks exactly the same. If you look really closely, you probably can't see it through YouTube, but there is actually slight change to the color of this thing wrapped around his arm, but it's not really changing the animation, so we want to cut that out because otherwise it'll look choppy. So I'm just going to delete that, and you can see again it's another duplicate, and now it's a new frame. So I'm going to hit over. Now this is technically a new frame, however it's just screen shake, so we're going to want to get rid of that because we want only new frames. This one right here, I believe, is Well, there's a little bit of an animation change. You can see his foot doesn't have the thing there anymore. So it's up to you. You might want to keep this. You might want to get rid of it. I'm going to keep it and go to the next frame. This one's definitely just a screen shake, and it's pretty severe, so we're going to want to cut that. And now we got him getting kicked into the air. There's different stuff. There's motion blur. There's these lines here. I guess I'll keep that for now. But every frame, you really want to look at the body language of the characters usually. So if you see, these are all different, but if we go through here, I mean, that's the same as that. So I'd say we probably want to cut that. This one, we probably want to cut as well. That's a new frame, I would say. That one's a new frame. That's a new frame. Nah, that's not a new frame. Not new enough. So basically, you're just going to kind of go through this process. It'll get easier when you have less like motion blur and screen shake effects. So if I just go farther in here, just to skip around, you can see this is basically the same frame. So I'm going to cut that. New frame, same frame, cut. Now, this one, yeah, new. This one, I'd say we can probably go with new, but you might want to cut it because really it's just the debris that's moving. So it's kind of up to you. And you just kind of keep doing that. So I'm going to fast forward now. Hopefully you get the idea. Try to cut it down as much as possible. Less is more, basically. Alright, so I have finished cutting this, and this is what it looks like. And if you see, if I go through here frame by frame, you can see almost every single frame is a new animation. There is a little bit of an exception for some of these because you have a smoke effect going on here and different stuff. But I tried to cut it up as best as I can. Maybe you might want to cut it a little more than even this, but we're going to go with this, see how it works. So after we've cut this up, what we want to do is we want to select all these frames and create a compound clip. So we've created that compound clip. Now we don't need this timeline anymore, so we can just exit out of that and go back to my first timeline over here. And we're going to drag this compound clip that we just made right here. So you can see compound clips here, original clips here. This over here is a clip I've done beforehand. So I'm just going to move that over there. So you can see this clip is a lot shorter now. So now what we want to do is, for this tutorial, we're going to say we want this clip over here to be as long as the original clip, but we want it to look smoother. So in order to do that, what you need to do is you need to come over here to the effects generator. You might have to open the effects library, generators, and go to window. Drag the window out, make it match over here. Drag the back of it so that it matches the length of the clip that you want. Now, one thing that's really important though is to go to this first frame of this clip and go 2 over and drag the window so that's 2 behind. Otherwise, when we do the Twixtor effect, if it's not behind like that, it can cause problems. So after we've done that, we want to select these 2 and create another compound clip of these 2 clips. So I'm going to create that. And so now we can see we have compound clip 7, and it's the same length. If we go through here though, you'll see that it's just a white box right here. So we're going to end up working on that so that this clip will eventually have that white box there. It'll be all just one animation. So now that we have this compound clip, we're going to have to right click it and hit open in Fusion right here. So once we open it in Fusion, first off, I'd like to point out that you have 2 nodes in Fusion to start with, this media in node and this media out node. Media in represents whatever the input video is. So we input this video of Mob getting kicked, so that's what's here, no effects, nothing. Then there is this line connecting this media in to the media out. Media out is going to be the entirety of all the effects that we do in between media 1. All the effects we put in here will be processed and then output to media 1. So that's how that works. If you see here, there's these 2 dots under media out, and that represents where this is shown. So right now this is white right here on the right side. So the viewer in the top right is showing what the media out is right now. So we can go around here and we can see what all this looks like. So what we want to do is we want to go to media in, and click the left so that it appears over here. So right now our media in and our media out are being shown. However, they're the same because we've not put any effects yet. So now the next step is go to our frames here, and these all have frame numbers, and we want to go until the animation stops and we see this white box. So it looks like frame 21 is where we last have animation. So you want to keep that number in mind, and we're going to come back to that later. So our next step is going to be to add the effect. So first off, we're going to have to make sure the effects library is open. It's right here in the top left, and go to Open Effects. Scroll down, you'll find Revision Effects. Remember, of course, you have to have the OFX installed beforehand. And then you have Twixtor right here. I click Twixtor, it added it. Now, if you go to the right here, these are all the options for Twixtor. If you can't see this, it's the inspector, so you're going to have to click up here, open the inspector, and you can see all these settings. These are basically the best settings for AMVs, so just copy my settings here, and this is what will work best. Right here it says use GPU. I keep it off because when I use GPU, it tends to get glitchy. I tend to get green frames, which represent your GPU running out of memory, and just a bunch of headaches. So otherwise, it does process faster than the CPU though. But if you have, glitches like I do, you're gonna want to keep it off. If you don't have glitches though, if you have a really good GPU, you could put this on and see how it works, and it'll probably work fine for you. So try it out on. If you're having glitches, switch to off and just don't use it. Now, this is basically, we have Twixtor here, so now we want to go to frame 0, and on frame 0 we want to go here in Twixtor options and keyframe frame 0. Then remember our animation ends on frame 21, so what we want to do is we want to go to the last frame in Fusion, which is 36, and we want to keyframe 21. There we go. And so basically, simply what we've said is to Twixtor is to take from frame 0 to frame 21 and stretch it all the way to frame 36, and it'll guess all the in-between frames. One thing to keep in mind is that Fusion, they always show one frame farther. So if you see, I put the keyframe on 36 here as the last frame. However, there's one more frame over here. If you can see, it's yellow. So that would be frame 37. That's actually one frame farther than our source clip. So you don't usually want to put keyframes on that. So we're going to put one ahead, which is on frame 36. So now that we've done that, basically we do have the basics of Twixtor set up. You can just hit play, and it'll go through that entire clip and process the effect going through it. Now, one thing I noticed before we continue is this. Remember, the left side is our media in, the right side is our media out. Our left side, though, for some reason turned black on frame 0, and it should not be doing that. This is a glitch that happens sometimes. If this happens to you, all you want to do is hit Control Space. It'll bring up the search. You search for media in, and then add that. And all this is, it's the same as this up here. However, this one kind of got glitched out, so we're going to deconnect that, reconnect that, and then we're going to put it so that Fusion checks this. So I'm going to click that, and you can see frame 0 is there again. So if that happens, that's just a glitch, and that's a way to solve that. So I'm just going to hit play, let this run through, and it'll process the Twixtor effect, and I'll get back to you when it's done loading. Alright, so now we have the effect loaded. If I hit play, you'll be able to see it here on the right, and this is the original clip on the left. You can see it already looks a lot smoother. And you can also see how the original clip, it ends over here on frame 22. However, on frame 22 on the output, we still have it because it has elongated the clip. So this is pretty good. However, we do see there are some glitches, especially right here on frame 11. You can see it, because of the screen shake and everything, this does not look right. So we want to end up adding some keyframes which are going to give us some speed ramps to help hide some of this. So to do that, the main way to fix it is you want to speed up these parts that look bad. So it's trying to make an in-between frame here, which is the only reason why this looks bad. If we look over here, we can see we are on frame 11, and the frame that Twixtor is trying to do is frame 6.4. So it's trying to do, frame 6 while 40% is like frame 7 basically, and trying to blend them in between. So what we want to do is we want to make it a lot smoother. So if this is between frame 6 and 7, right? So let's go to frame 6 and 7. We can see this is what frame 6 looks like on the left, and that's what frame 7 looks like. So it's trying to simulate between these two frames, but it's too big of a jump. So what we want to do is we want to speed those up, so that way it's just one frame at a time. I mean, this is what it'll look like if we just go from frame 6 directly to frame 7, right? So Twixtor, however, it's trying to simulate in between frames. So if we make it so that it does not simulate in between frames for these frames, then it'll work really nicely again. So in this case, what I think I'm going to do is, once it gets to frame 7 here, if we look on the left, we can see every frame past that is really smooth. Same with on the right. If you look on the right, frame 12, which is frame 7 over here, everything after this looks really smooth. So I'm going to go, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to frame 7, and I'm going to keyframe this to be frame 7. And so now what that's doing is we've basically told Twixtor, hey, from frame 0 to frame 7, match it exactly. So don't guess any in-between frames. It should match up exactly. And then after that, stretch from frame 7 to frame 21, which is the last frame with animation. Stretch that all the way to frame 36. So we're doing that now, and I'll come back after this is finished loading. Alright, so it has finished processing. If we hit play, you can see on the right again, we've now hidden that choppy frame. So if we go through here, you can see every frame matches exactly on the left and right up till frame 7. After that, it should start to diverge because it becomes slower on the right compared to the left. Now, since we've done that, we could probably call it a day here. There's still choppiness though, and there is also a very important effect, is that we right now, we don't have any speed ramps or anything. And it's pretty much always recommended to try to add some speed ramps if you can to all your clips. So what that is first we need to open the spline editor. If you don't have the spline editor, top right here, click spline, and then top right here, it matches it to view. So if you have it off to the corner or zoomed out, it'll fit to view when you click this. So you want to click that. And now the spline editor, it probably looks intimidating at first, but don't worry, it's really not as complex as it looks. So all it is it's a visual representation of where your keyframes are. So the horizontal axis at the top here, that represents how many frames your entire source clip that you're working with in Fusion is. So we're working from frame 0 to frame 36. So that's what this is. Then right here, this is Twixtor frame keyframes. So we've keyframed Twixtor on frame 0 to match with the Fusion on frame 0. Then on frame 6, on frame 7, we've keyframed it to match with frame 7 of the Fusion output. And then on frame 36 of the Fusion output, we've keyframed Twixtor to be on frame 21. So that's basically all that is here. So what you want to do is, as it is right now, you can see that this line right here is just a linear line. And so what that's basically saying is, hey, from frame 7 to frame 36, I want you to, let's say for example, go 50% slower. So the entirety of this line is just saying, hey, we're going the same slow motion speed of 50%. However, that ends up being not so interesting. It would be a lot more interesting if it was, for example, let's say it was 50% slower, and then it slowly got like 60% slower, 70% slower. Every single frame, it changed a little. So hopefully that makes sense. In order to do that, what you're going to want to do is select with the box and just hit S, and that'll smooth. S for smooth. And you can see it turned it into a curve now. So now, instead of 10, this being like another 50%, the same as this was here, it changes over time how fast it is. So it's more dynamic in terms of what its speed is. And that'll help make it look a lot more interesting to the eye. So I'll let that load. Alright, it's finished loading. This is what the effect looks like now. And so it's looking a lot better than it did before. One thing I do want to double check, this curve, if I wasn't clear enough before, basically what this curve is doing is it's saying between these two lines here, it's just playing at normal speed. 1 frame for 1 frame. No in between frames made. After that, it's basically saying, hey, take this, we're going to go close to normal speed, but then we're slowly going to slow down over time because of this curve here. So it's going to start fast and it's going to get slower. That's basically what this curve is doing right now. Now notice that these first frames, I also did not hit smooth on them, and that is because these are each their own individual frame of the normal source clip with no in-between frames. If I were to smooth this, it would end up telling Twixtor, hey, I want some in-between frames here, because it's not going to be, linear 1, 2, 3. It's going to be 1, 1.25, 2, 2.53. It's going to have all these in-between frames, and so it's going to end up trying to guess. So we don't want that, so we're going to keep these first 2 points. We're not going to hit S on them. We're going to keep the normal. Only these 2 points did we hit S on. So when we play this, you can see it looks pretty good. However, this cloud of dust right here, it kind of sticks along too long, and it doesn't really look like there's much motion. So it's looking a little choppy. Now what I should have done is I should have cut this out more when we were doing the original part where we were cutting out all the duplicate frames. But unfortunately, I didn't do a very good job here. And so if we go to the left over here, with the media in, you can see what it was. So the cloud appeared there on frame 16, and it lasted till 17, 18, 19. No, 18. So it lasted 3 whole frames there, and there's really not much movement in the characters either. So I should have cut this down more. However, we can fix that by just adding some in-between frames to kind of make it go faster itself. So if we say it starts on 16 and it ends on 18, so instead of having 16, 17, 18, we're just going to try to do this in 2 keyframes. We're going to skip keyframe 17 basically. So to do that, let's go to our media out, and we'll find when that cloud appears. So it starts appearing right here, and that's on frame 16, basically right here, I say. So we'll say when we get to this frame here, that'll be frame 16, and then I'm going to go 1 frame over, and I'm going to say by the very next frame, I want you to be on frame 18. So we've now effectively skipped frame 17, and we're going directly from frame 16 to 18 and a whole number, which means it'll show the original keyframe, no in-between frames being calculated. And I will, once again, bring this over here, just hit play, let it simulate, and I will show you how it looks afterwards. Alright, it's done loading, and if we hit play, you can see it looks a lot smoother. It doesn't really stick on that big dust cloud anymore. And you can also see the whole effect of the curve. It kind of starts out fast, but then it kind of slows down, especially at the end there. So it just makes it a lot more interesting to look at. So this is pretty good here. You can always make little tweaks, try to make it better. However, in terms of Twixtor, I mean, this is pretty good. We're just going to keep it here and move on to the final part of this tutorial. So basically, the next and last part is to add RSMB. What RSMB will do is it tries to hide some of the imperfections that Twixtor might make. So it's going to be the same as before. We're going to go to Effects, Revision Effects, Twixtor, or not Twixtor, my bad, RSMB. So I'm just going to drag this over here so it's all together again. There we go. So we have Twixtor, then followed by RSMB. What RSMB does is it adds motion blur to areas that are kind of choppy and have high movement, basically. It detects where movement is going to be, and it adds blur. So if you see this comparison, kind of, his leg over here has blur, where when he's getting grabbed, he has blur. And this helps for lots of the in-between frames. Unfortunately, this clip in particular, it doesn't have too many of the frames where this would have a major impact. So where this ends up working best is if you get frames where it's kind of duplicated in Twixtor. So it's usually a sign that you don't have enough frames to go off of, but you can use this and it'll help cover up some of those imperfections. So just follow the rest of this tutorial, get your effect working as best you can in Twixtor, and then add our RSMB, and if it looks better, keep it with RSMB. If not, you don't have to use RSMB. But all it is adding, motion blur to areas with motion, basically. And you can change the blur amount right here. This is very sensitive though, so I'd be careful messing with it. The normal 0.5 it starts with is usually really good. Sometimes you might need to kick it up a bit, but too much and it'll just become a blurry mess. But that's pretty much it. After this, you can mess with the spline cursor somewhere. You can actually click these and drag them around these here to change what the curve looks like. I'm not going to do that now though. However, that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to let this load, and then I will compare this clip compared to the original clip so you can see what the difference was, basically. Alright, so we are back in the Edit tab, and I'm just going to take this clip. This compound clip here is our edited Twixtor clip, and this one right here is our normal non-edited Twixtor clip. I'm going to play them both, and you can see the comparison of how they're different. So you can see this one's looking a lot smoother overall. It has that kind of slowdown effect, especially at the end, which kind of helps this have more impact. Versus here, the impact's already great, but it doesn't have the same lasting impact effect compared to this here, where it just kind of lags on it, which is really cool. That's lots of stuff that you kind of want to do with Twixtor. So another thing to keep in mind is that it looks like this right now. However, this could be even smoother if we didn't make the clip match. Because remember, the clip that we were working with, it was this right here. So we turned this many frames into this many frames. However, we didn't need to do that. We could have made, only this many frames, for example. And that would have made the entire thing a lot more smooth overall. Another alternative is we could have actually made this a lot longer as well. If you make it longer, the chances that it'll be smooth are less. However, depending on the scene and what parts you slow down, it can still work really well. So for example, this kicking scene here, really there's not too much going on, and the transition's pretty good. So here too, and we could slow this down a lot more than what it is right now, which means we could have made this clip a lot longer, and it would have made the changes a lot more drastic. However, it still would have been really smooth. So you just got to kind of keep that in mind. Remember, scene selection and all this is all really important. But basically, that is in a nutshell how to use Twixtor and Resolve. This is pretty much the best method that I have found, and good luck.